Hey guys, this is Mark Goldberg from Mark Vlogs Watches with another exciting episode for you today. But before we jump into the meat and potatoes of why your Rolex is worth a bit less than what you might think, let's go ahead and get the quick fist watch check out of the way. And here it is. Today, guys, I am wearing a Rolex Submariner in pure 18 karat Rolex gold. 41 millimeters, blue dial, which you're not seeing here too well, and blue bezel. And guys, actually, I feel like this watch is a decent baseline for what we're going to be talking about here today. The 40 millimeter gold Submariner is, of course, discontinued in favor of the 41 millimeter. Retail on it was somewhere in the $35,000 range. However, if you check Chrono 24 today, you will see prices from anywhere from 36 into the low 40s. So am I looking at my Rolex every day going, you've gone up in value, I can get more than what I've paid for you? This is what we really need to talk about today. Now, although it is understandable why we want to keep an eye on the value of our watch collection, you have to understand that Rolex is not an investment. You would do better over time in the stock market or in a mutual fund than you will with a Rolex. But at the same time, Rolex is one of the very few brands in watch collecting where you can kind of flip them around and not lose a whole lot of money, or maybe even make some money. But there's one unfortunate reality in watch collecting, and that is if you're on the Facebook Rolex forums, you will constantly see people posting a picture of a Rolex saying, is this a good buy? Will it hold value? Or they post a Rolex of their own and they ask, what is it worth? It's very easy to get caught in the trap of worrying more about what your Rolex is worth than in the actual enjoyment of the product itself. So my advice, guys, is once you bought the Rolex, rest assured you have bought something which is about as good for value retention as you can get in the watch hobby. It's certainly much better than cars, motorcycles, or most of the stuff that, guys like to collect and hold on to. But at the same time, you shouldn't be really worrying about what its value is on a daily basis, or you're going to suck all the joy and pleasure out of the hobby altogether. So today I want to talk to you briefly about why your Rolex is probably worth less than you thought. And that comes down to where you are tracking for sales prices. In other words, we look at certain locations on the internet to get a concept of what people are charging for these watches, and then we make the assumption that our watch is worth something similar if we have the same watch. So here's where people, first of all, tend to go. They tend to go to two main sources right away, and one is chrono24.com, or you can use the app. And you can look up any watch model and you will see not what they are selling for. And this is your key mistake. You will see what people are asking for them. And a lot of times what you have on there are dealers posting watches that they may not even have possession of. They're posting them with very high prices. And then if they get a nibble, they will run out and try and source that watch. Because what you have to remember is watch dealers, well, they have a brotherhood, they have a sisterhood, they have a unique organization where these guys are talking to themselves constantly, trading, buying, and selling watches. And so if one of them all of a sudden needs a platinum Daytona, because they put one on Chrono 24 for $129,000 and they got a nibble, well, they'll run out to their group of fellow brethren and see about searching out that watch. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Chrono 24 will give you like a general idea, but all it tells you is what people are asking. It doesn't tell you what people are receiving, or even if they actually legitimately own the watch. So that's the first problem with Chrono 24. And the second one really has to do with who's selling on Chrono 24. Now, yes, you have private sellers. So you as a Joe Blow watch collector, I could start an account over at Chrono and I could list my watch for sale. But I'm going up against dealers who are able to purchase these things right exactly at the same time as they need them. Whereas I'm sitting with this watch and let's say, I lost my job, I have a problem, I need the money relatively soon. I'm under duress in a way that a watch dealer is not. They are more like very patient fishermen, and I'm out there, trying to poach a sale quick, fast, and furious because I need it. That's the problem. They don't need it. They want it. Long term, they need it, but they don't need short-term sales at losses. So they are more willing to bide their time. Chrono 24 merely gives you an idea of what people might be asking, but it's a general idea. Now, there's one deficit in my knowledge of Chrono 24, and that is, as the buyer or seller, I use it like most of you guys do, which is to just kind of get a rough check on prices. Have you sold a watch through Chrono 24? Did you feel like it was a safe transaction? And conversely, have you bought a watch on Chrono? Let's talk about that in the comments. And this is a great time for me to remind you, please, to throw a like on this video. It helps me enormously. And if you haven't subscribed, let's go ahead and do that now. Now, where is another place that people are constantly and illogically checking? And I'm with you. Don't shoot me, guys. I'm just the messenger. But I'm with you on this. But where is another place that we are constantly and illogically checking for prices? And that would be eBay. Well, the problem with eBay is you have a lot of power sellers on there who are able to buy at great margin. And they are certainly going to have made a better purchase than you or I did. So one of the things that you have to take into account when looking on eBay is, once again, you're looking at asking price and you're not necessarily looking at selling price, unless you go into the filters and find the tab for sold and completed items, and then you flick those tabs. And now you can look at Rolex reference numbers that have sold, and you can view the original listings. You can see what they've sold, when they've sold, and depending on the nature of the sale, you may be able to see either precisely what they sold for, or you'll get an idea of that a benchmark was set and that they accepted a lower offer, okay? That's because if I listed this for sale for $38,000 and I accepted an offer of $35,000, it would show up as a sold completed listing, originally listed at $38,000, and it would simply say sold, best offer accepted, but it wouldn't tell you the exact amount of that best offer. So even though sold listings are your best way of checking what's legitimately selling on eBay and how long it's taking and more or less what the rough estimate of sale prices are, it is far from an exact science, guys. It's a rough guess. Also, I will tell you this much. I have had good experience buying Rolex and then getting it authenticated using eBay. But as a seller, I wouldn't do it. I've always felt very comfortable as a buyer on eBay because there's buyer protections, but seller protections are pretty bad, so that's not a good place for you to sell. But it is a reasonable spot for you to incorporate into your information gathering process. Now, there's another place that people look to determine what they think their Rolex is going to be worth, and that would be on certain Rolex reseller websites, okay? I'm talking about Bob's Watches, David S.W., Nashville Watches. There are a good handful, Jewelers on Time. There are probably a dozen of these guys. There's Federico and John over at Del Rey Watches. So we tend to look at websites like that to see what they are asking for their inventory. And then we may just accidentally forget that there is a great difference between the buy and the sell, okay? So if a website, not to specify any of them, but if a website is selling a watch for $38,000, or let's say, a steel one for $12,500, $13,000, I might make the assumption that that's what my watch is worth because that's what Bob's Watches or David S.W. or Federico, that's what they can get for it. But what you have to remember is you're not Bob's Watches, okay? You haven't spent millions of dollars on market share. You haven't been in the business for 30 years. You don't have that trusted name or reputation. And so sadly, you have a handicap when you're selling up against Bob's Watches. Here's the reality. A guy will go out and buy from Bob's Watches and pay $14,000. But if he's buying it from you, he wants to pay $10,000. He wants an enormous discount for dealing with you, the unknown, or even me. So this is a problem when we are comparing ourselves to those kinds of websites. Also, remember, these guys tend to add value to watches in a way that we don't. And by that I mean they inspect them, they service them, they inventory them, they ship them, they tie their money up in a way that the individual watch owner does not do. So when we look at those prices that they're charging, we might make the automatic assumption that we are kind of close in value, and we're not even close. The final place that you might make a mistake in trying to evaluate your watch is seeing what the ADs or jewelry stores sell them for, right? Because some ADs have a used Rolex department, and then some jewelry stores that are not Rolex ADs at all sell used Rolexes, and we see them for very high prices in the showcase. So we make the logical assumption that we can get something close to that from by selling right back to the AD or to a jewelry store. The problem is, what you're forgetting about is the margin that these folks are used to buying on. Okay, so if you go to sell your Rolex to the AD, you're going to be very disappointed in what they're going to offer you, because chances are it may not even make itself into their used case. Chances are they're just going to move it on to a wholesaler. It's like selling your car to the auction rather than to the end user. There's going to be a bunch of other people that have to get their slice of the profit. So selling to an AD is a really bad proposition. Buying from an AD is the ultimate, excellent, most soundest way that you can buy a Rolex. But selling one back to the AD is always going to be a mistake. Those guys have to get ridiculous margin, and so the offers are going to be pretty low ball. Now, here are my final thoughts on the subject. Probably the only way to get a really, truly realistic view of what your particular Rolex is worth right now is to offer it for sale to one of the most legitimate resellers of Rolexes out there, okay? And I mentioned a bunch of names. They pay at different levels, and they may pay at different levels on the same watch at different times. Yes, it may be going up because supplies are scarce and demand is high, but you never really know if one of the websites that you're talking to, one of the Rolex resellers, maybe he's just heavy right now for whatever reason in Batman's. So he doesn't specifically need one. If he can poach one at a good price, he'll do it. But maybe he doesn't have a built-in customer waiting right for it, in which case he'd probably likely offer you more. So my advice is you need to have like 3 or 4 of these guys who you can offer your watch to, and then you'll get an average of pricing. It's going to be a bit less than you thought in all likelihood, but remember, they don't just turn that watch around and expect to make $500 on it. They're taking all kinds of risk. They are covering the shipping, they're covering the insurance. They're going to want to open that watch up to make sure that they bought a legitimate one, because they have a reputation to uphold. And when they sell that watch, they want to be able to stand behind it. So even if it's a Rolex still with like 3 years worth of warranty, they're going to need to open it up, check it out, and be sure that they can authenticate it and stand behind it. So the prices that you get from these guys, they should be somewhat related to one another, but they're going to be a bit different. Now, I'm going to conclude on this. Here's what I don't advise. I don't advise, hey, I wonder what my watch is worth, so I'm going to send an email out to 5 of these guys, make them all jump through hoops. I would avoid that because then on the day that you decide you really do want to sell it, well, the problem is going to be that you will have annoyed, with a lot of false alarms, you'll have annoyed the dealer to the point where he doesn't really want to deal with you. So my best piece of advice is what you should do is you should look at the resellers that we talked about. Look and see what that watch that you own is selling for. And you know what? You should knock about 25% off of that. That is my best guess. Probably 25%, because they're going to have to make money on your watch. Maybe even, depending on the model, 30%. Now, you can help me understand if I've got these percentages more or less right. So tell me about your experiences selling to the major resellers of Rolexes. What did they offer you versus what did they charge their end user customer for that same watch? And then guys, together we can kind of calculate out what is the average dealer percentage. But they do need to make money. They are entitled to make money. They are tying up hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. They are taking risks. So listen, I'm a capitalist, okay? I stand behind their right to make money. We just want to be sure that we get a legitimate idea of what our Rolex is worth, because we're constantly thinking about it. So my final piece of advice is quit thinking about it. Just enjoy your Rolex. Guys, talk to me in the comments about this. This is Goldberg. Peace out.
Paint the sky.